Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are CTAA. My name...
You know that so much
I think you've heard it several times. My name is Taylor Klocke. I work on all of our marketing, all of our events, our advocacy. I spoke a little bit about lunch on a super high level, on a legislative update, and for this, we're gonna kind of split this workshop into two parts. The first part will be all about CTAA, the resources we have, the events we do, all of the fabulous things that comes with our association. And then the second part will be more about that legislative update that I talked about really high level at lunch. And we also have Karen Souza with us.
Hello, everyone. I think one important thing to know that we're so appreciative with Taylor with her background is before you were at CTA, when the advocacy work that we do, just to share that for a moment.
Yeah, so I've been at CTA for a little over 4 years. Before there, I was working on Capitol Hill for a House member doing all of his communications. And then before then, I was in college. So that was my stepping stone into CTAA.
So when people often ask that kind of question, when I'm talking with staffers, I mean, that very important, good question. What do they want to hear? How do they want to hear it? How do I make sure, that we're having this good communication and this relationship building that we're trying to do? Many people correctly should turn to Taylor as someone hearing these kind of communications, and how to reach out and have that right connection. So you'll get practical answers to that as the best of her ability as to what mattered in the work that she did. And I think that's a key resource there among many other things. So thanks, Taylor. Before overseeing our training and certification programs, I had mentioned that for 25 years I was our association's membership director. So the work that we do in membership and who we are is something that's hard to read and we wouldn't expect you to. But we wanted to let you know in what you see here, two key things. I don't think it'll be a surprise to any of you. The first part is that our strongest amount of membership in that dark blue color is our rural members. There are about 1,200 members of our association between your state association and all state associations. All of them have decided to be members of our association because there's no direct legal or other type of connection otherwise. Like many other associations have chapters and all those kind of things. And that's not how we were structured because I don't know if you know this, but almost all state associations started before there was an official CTAA. So there was never that kind of relationship established. CTAs started working on rural housing under what was called Rural America, and all the rural work that was done eventually led to the board of directors at that time having so many people on the housing side saying, we keep hearing people can't get to where they need to go. We're hearing that all the time. And there were so many other agencies working on housing that CTA took a conscious step away. The board decided to work on transportation. After all, it was UMTA, for those people as old as I am, the Urban Mass Transit Administration. There was really no focus on rural. None. Not the funding, not the resources, nothing. And so way back in our history, there's a man named George Rucker, who was a statistician, loves statistics. And our one and only opportunity when the small group began to be reaching out to UMTA all the time and the government saying, what about our rural America? And he got all the stats together, one and only presentation we were allowed, and convinced them there really is transit in rural America. There's a lot of needs. And he really came about to the RTAP and all these other programs we have today. One person, in case we ever wondered, does someone make a difference? George Rucker did, and that's how we are where we are. So our association, for our board of directors, and you're seeing a collective happy group, someone there is Taylor and I and others, but the key thing is that I think is critical to know, it's all about democracy in terms of our association. So for the 10 FTA regions, there are members that are voting for someone to represent that region and serve on our board of directors. So we have all 10 regions on our board of directors with CTA members voting who's going to serve and holding those elections every 3 years. They're every 3 years, rotating throughout all these different regions. So your vote counts, one vote per organization, no matter how big you are or how small you are. If you're a member of our association, your one vote counts to get somebody on the board of directors representing your region. And then we have national directors, and those national directors are the board determines that there are certain representation we're missing. Easy example. For years, we didn't have anyone from a college or university giving a voice to that aspect of what we all need and is critical for the work of the association. So the board said, we're going to reach out, and we have had a university partner and have continued since then. So no matter what, our work in our rural membership, if you wouldn't mind going back for a moment, and the other big color there that is being circled to the right there in the bottom right-hand corner are small urban members, our small urban network. We're up here. And then the bottom right down side is our NEMT? Yes. Thank you, sorry. The NEMT members. And then up in the other big quadrant is a small urban network. Small urban members joining our association is because they asked CTAA, is there some things you can help to support us in the work we do and allow us to be the drivers of our membership, allow us to create our conference, allow us to have a voice, a small urban community. Many of them were rural. After all, we all know what the census does, and many times we get pulled as a rural program into being kicked up a notch based on that, into moving from a rural and all the rural work to all that's required when you're moving up to small urban and so forth. So for that reason, that community of members who were rural members originally asked if they could have something distinctive that they owned and worked on and did. So it's representative of what members tell us. Ever heard that phrase? The member is the mission. The members make us our mission. So it's what. If you've never heard it, it's a good phrase. We're here because of our members, and the work that you do is our mission, and that's how we got here. You have a question or a comment?
How many tribal governments are involved?
And our tribals.
11.
Yep.
So it is part of our strategic plan is to gain a more engaged following with our tribal partners.
How many did you say it was?
We have 11.
11. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So
we're actively working to engage them more with
that's
the
true.
association, engage them more with each other, things like that.
We've had sometimes larger numbers, I know, with tribal members, and every few years we have a tribal transportation conference where certain parts of the country where our expo is, where they wanted us to have a conference, and we've done that. Joining as members, many of them say, but we're talking to you all the time. And we're like, oh, but we want to have strong membership affiliation. Please connect with us. And sometimes we do go through up phases, and sometimes we stay at about 11 to 12. So here's our members in Utah. And I know you can see that yourself.
This is just a quick highlight.
A quick highlight, a quick shout out to thank you for being members of ours. So no surprise that when we talk about resources, I would talk about training as well. So what we're showing here is, in this facility example, that some of our programs have been in existence since the start of CTAA, and one of them that's the most oldest ones is, you may have heard of PASS, Passenger Assistance Safety and Sensitivity. And at this point, we've set the industry standard for training for that service and who we're training. And there's a train the trainer component, and there's a driver component. COVID moved us from being only in the classroom, which was originally what everybody wanted, to having no choice. When members were reaching out and saying, I'm in trouble, Karen, I've had so much turnover, I need to have more drivers trained in PASS. So the program then moved over to virtual online training for trainers only, because it's one-on-one training with trainers when we're training trainers. Taking a device similar to that, having a whole photography studio set up and a master trainer in there, training wheelchair securement and all aspects of that, only to trainers virtually, one-on-one, because that's what it takes to get it done and not have different voices and different comments being made. And if there's anything to be corrected, you know what the nicest thing about that is? That all the people who attend those classes say, I don't have to feel embarrassed, uncomfortable if I didn't know something, if my agency's been doing something wrong for wheelchair securement, and have it witnessed by anyone. I'm with a master trainer who's there to make sure we do it right and we train it accordingly. It was an interesting feedback because we didn't know how that was going to go. So our oldest program is PASS. Every single NEMT broker uses PASS as their standard of training that they provide in the country. In about another month, We're going to the one state that gives everybody chills because of the volume. Pass is only going to be only offered in New York State and only pass for all their NEMT training. The state of New York for NEMT work provides more rides in a year than the rest of the United States. We're talking training about 60,000 to 80,000 drivers to launch. I'm sorry, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Only the numbers and all the technology behind it to support it with all the software and everything. But that was a decision brought on board with the support of New York State that they said, CTA's passes the standard, we only want the best, and that's what we're going with. So get ready. If anybody tries to reach me those first few days, I don't think I'm doing anything, but we're just troubleshooting anything. Boy, drivers, you think about that, all taking online courses, and that's not always the thing they're best at, right? They try hard, but it doesn't always work. So besides pass, the rest of the circle here is, these are all certification programs. They are taught in the classroom or with a virtual instructor. Vehicle maintenance management and inspection for people overseeing maintenance programs and maintenance staff themselves. The next thing is Certified Community Transit Manager program. That's the second oldest program. That also is Certified Transit Public Administrators at the state DOTs, and AASHTO supports that program. So transit managers having their own certification. So everything in certification involves attending a 2-day training, having a testing component at the end, successfully completing that test, getting certified. God bless you. The next one is supervisors, it says. This is the frontline supervisor training. Certified Community Transit Supervisors. Many people, as we know, and I hear all the time, promoted up within an organization from a driver to that next level. What's the hardest leadership transition they have? Not being the same level and friends with everybody anymore. I'm now supposed to be in a leadership role, and they honestly don't quite know what to do to have that important critical step in their relationship of moving to the supervisor level. This was created with a very intense prerequisite. Many of the courses have prerequisites that has you do about 5 hours worth of work before you come into the class with the trainer. You know what the advantage is that we find that we're very fortunate at CTA? When you're a national association, all the industry experts want to work for you and get exposure that way to everybody else too. I mean, it goes both ways. So we get the best leaders and best experts in the field that we work with to create and design our courses, and again in the classroom or online. So it says supervisors. It's often called as a shortcut, frontline supervisor training or certified community transit supervisor. So this is definitely tailored for new people, promoted up or coming from outside that you've moved to that level. This is not just for overseeing drivers, those supervisors. There are authentic, all kinds of aspects of maintenance and all the departments in the different areas and how that works. It's about leadership. So it's a good training program around that. Coming around the corner, professional dispatch and scheduling. That's available online, which now we have full classes with dispatchers, because you are so small, many of you, you can't have your dispatchers come to a classroom course. That's understandable. No way. You'd like them to come, I've heard that many times, but it wasn't available online, and it is now. And so around the last part is safety officers, certified safety officers, safety and security officers. So we confirm with the FTA on an annual basis that this course for rural agencies that don't require what small and large urban our requirements are, very specific about that aspect of safety and security, that for rural agencies that is not the same level of requirement, it is not as small urban and large urban. And so because of that, this course was designed and approved by the FTA to meet the rural provider programs, because our emphasis is still on safety and security and overseeing that, of course, to support the work that you do. So there is that course as well. So they're all certification, all testing, something where you're having certifications. In almost all cases it's 3 years, and only for drivers the industry standard is 2 years and pass, and then you have to get recertified. So with this capability of having everything available online or in a classroom, whichever is preferred, the next thing I want you to know is we have an online training center. And what that is these are self-paced courses. You're not live and interacting with an instructor. Some of them are as short as only needing a couple of hours, like 2 hours or so, and some of them are 4 or 5 or even a full day's worth of training. But these self-paced courses, one of them is the full day training of the course that I gave you the highlights this morning on. So there is the recruiting, building, and retainable, the sustainable driver workforce. This was held in Missouri. All the operators in Missouri were in the room together. We held this training. You're seeing their interaction on this kind of a device of us talking, asking questions, engaged in it. A whole series of in-depth handouts, all kinds of a handbook to supplement that course. So there is something like that as a full day in-depth training, not just the highlights. Frontline supervisor training. Well, I told you there's a certification around that. However, some people said they didn't want to wait till the next time the class was available. Could you let the prerequisite be available, please? And after a lot of asking us to do it, we said yes. So some people who want to have the prerequisite taken and then join the class when it's held later in the year will do that immediately because they have somebody new who got promoted and they don't want to wait. And I get that. So we got it. So we said, okay, you can do that prerequisite now, and then you're not paying additional fees when you sign up for the class. You've already taken that. The next one is excellence in training, train the trainer. Again, listening to our members. Many of the state associations said, we have trainers training across our state and also at our association where we want to have something that proves to themselves their level of excellence and helps them when they're developing courses, developing from scratch. Suddenly they're told, hey, do you think next 2 weeks you can have a course ready in X? We don't have it right now. I can't find it anywhere. We agreed we want it. I want you to develop it. This excellence in training, train the trainer is geared only for trainers. Led by one of the best trainers I know, if you've ever taken a course from him, I think you'll agree, and Michael Knoll. So we developed a course tailored only for trainers. It tells them how to develop courses, how to train courses, all the things you need when you're going to train. It's really great, especially for new people who haven't ever had to do this, and they're probably shivering in their boots when somebody tells them they have to do this, and they're like, I've never done this before. I know how to speak to people, but I don't know how to develop course content and do all this stuff. So this is a great course. Also in Pennsylvania, that association really asked us to bring this and pull it out of another course we have and just let it stand alone. So we said, sure, we'll do that. So if you have trainers that you want to have take that, that's what I'd recommend. The next couple are understanding passengers who have experienced trauma. That was a foundation who paid us to work with experts that they identified in the world that they come from with trauma-informed training and take our expertise in working within different aspects of what applies to transit. So it's transit specific. Think of this course, understanding passengers who experience trauma, everything from PTSD, which is a very understandable part of trauma and transporting passengers like that. This covers all aspects of trauma, and it met the highest standards of that foundation, and they approved it and awarded it, and that's what that course is. That course is free because the foundation sponsors it. The other ones, there's cost fees to the others so far. Then there's PASS. Volunteer driver safety. There are some systems, of course, in the United States that have large volunteer driver systems. And so there was the National Center for Volunteer Transportation that used to run independently that did training for drivers. And when that funding from that foundation ran out, they asked CTAA to house this. We said it makes sense to us. Our many members provide volunteer transportation and training around that. And so it's like, you can call it like a very light level of PASS for volunteers. So many volunteer agencies still have their drivers take PASS, but some of them have them take this other version of volunteer driver training. And last but not least, conflict management and de-escalation for transit drivers and supervisors. Boy, that course has been asked for a lot, and many different groups are offering that. Many of you in Utah remember back when Reem Lazaro was here and doing a lot of work, and with Utah Transit Authority as well. He worked with this with the New Mexico DOT, took their RTAP funds and created this, and when you use RTAP funds, it's available to everyone. So we brought it up nationally from there. So that's tailored for drivers and supervisors. So that's something free, because our TAP funds were used for it. So free conflict management, de-escalation, volunteer driver training, and understanding passengers who've experienced trauma. The rest of our courses are reasonable for the rest of the self-paced courses there, from $50 to $75, somewhere in that range per person, per driver, per person. So, member-only benefits.
So we offer a number of other resources outside of training. We have a monthly member webinar series. Caroline, for example, was on it with us with VIA last year. We do things like topics like cybersecurity. Last month we did an NTD listening session on the proposed regulation changes, where we just gathered information from all of our members and we submitted comments to that. So we do webinars every month on various topics, analyses and reports. We do really in-depth looks at the FTA awards. So further in this presentation, we're going to go through the FY 2022 Low-No grant awards. That's stuff that members receive directly from us. I think this morning I just sent out our state DOT survey results from the supply bus crisis. So those kinds of things members get first. For our strategic plan, I just wanted to highlight this was something that we did 2 years ago with our members, and it really is our 5-year plan to move us forward as an association and help be better for all of our members and for the industry. And then finally, advocacy. What I like to highlight here is we are not lobbyists, so any dues that are being paid are not going to any lobbying firms. We are merely educating Congress on various pieces of legislation. We're not lobbyists.
I would say also Expo. Expo is a member-only benefit that we'll be discussing too.
Yep. So this is an example of a newsletter. Fast Mail comes out every 2 weeks. It is my blood, sweat, and tears. I love this newsletter, and it really provides a lot of great information about what your peers are doing. And then Expo. So we recently changed all of our events to members only. So you have to be a member to come to our top 2 conferences, which is Expo and Sun. So we will be in Oklahoma City next May. It is only 3-ish states away, so I hope to see all of you there. And then we are going to Gulfport, Mississippi for our small urban conference next August. It'll be very warm. We have this academy called the Emerging Leaders Academy. Something I would like to preface is that I don't want the perception to be like the 21-year-old that just got out of college is working in your industry. It's really someone who is not yet a director or a supervisor or a manager but wants to get there, or is new in the transit industry and wants to kind of get this leadership experience. Due to a lot of input, so we are in our 5th year, due to a lot of helpful input, we are now doing a week-long academy in our office in DC for our emerging leaders. So you will be paired with a member of our board of directors, and you will have a year-long mentorship, and you will really dive into self-discovery, practical management tools, and you will participate in our annual Hill Day. So our annual Hill Day is where staff and board go together to meet with all of the congressional offices that we can. So an ELA participant will be able to join us next year. So big plug for ELA. I really encourage anyone who's interested to apply.
You asked, we listened, and we said we agree. You know, it makes sense.
We operate 2 TA centers through the FTA. Amy next door runs the National Center for Mobility Management. It is a fabulous TA center. It's been going on close to 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, really helpful for mobility managers. It's a great educational piece. And then NCAT. So NCAT was born of the need for rural, small urban, and tribal members needing access to transit technology. And not even access, just education. There's so much out there that our members were saying they just didn't know what was out there. So NCAT was developed, and this next slide will detail, we are now accepting rolling applications for our strategic technology technical assistance teams. So what happens here is our NCAT team and a slew of experts will come to your agency and work with you to develop what do you need, what are you missing, what is practical for you, what makes sense, things like that. So applications on a rolling basis. If you have any interest at all in anything transit technology, I really encourage you to apply. So we went over these briefly at lunch, our legislative priorities for this year, and I wanted to pose the question, what are we missing? What are some things that are happening that you think that we are just not paying enough attention to? Is there anything? Yes.
So a frustration that we've had for a long time is that there's no purpose-built vehicle. Right, so most all of us get cutaway vehicle that was never intended to transport people like we use it. The ride is quite horrible. You know, it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it requires a lift. You know, it requires a lift. You know, I mean, you can get low floor. Of course, they're more money, and so has it ever been considered on a federal level to where money, instead of a bunch of small grants we put out, but you could put a whole bunch of money and make it big enough so that a manufacturer would build and design a purpose-built vehicle?
So that's a fabulous question. Along these lines, we have talked to the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee. So Peter DeFazio, he was the chairman, he's retiring. We had a really in-depth discussion about a base bus, which would kind of lead to this, but it was more to be helpful with Build America requirements. So there is conversations happening, but I would be happy to bring that up because I do think that's important.
I mean, I think it's a frustration from all of us,
Yeah.
operators and our customers. And yeah, it's great to have a Ford or a Chevy chassis, you know, mechanics to work on.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not a great ride for our customers.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you go way back, you guys probably remember the Orion buses. This is way back in the Wayback Machine, but you know, that was a purpose-built vehicle that worked well for our needs. So anyway, that's.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody knows that vehicles is a problem, and with the consolidation of the manufacturers, it's making it worse, not better.
So true.
And they're going to go where the money is, right? So
Right.
if it's RVs or whatever, they're just going to go where the demand is.
Yes.
And so, you know, just kind of like the post office, they have a purpose-built vehicle. The military does it all the time.
That's a great idea.
Great if we had one for our clients.
Thank you. Any other legislative things that we should be working on or aware of?
Can you go back a slide?
Yeah. So, yeah, most of our focus recently has been on the small bus crisis. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit at lunch, appropriations versus authorization. We are fully authorized for the next 5 years thanks to the infrastructure law. This cute diagram hasn't actually worked in practice in many, many years. This is the way it's supposed to work, but we all know continuing resolutions is how our government has been funded for a long time. Here, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have members and my boss, Scott Bogren, testify frequently before the House and the Senate on transit-related issues. The bipartisan infrastructure law, or the IIJA, we've talked a lot about that. So much money, $91 billion in transit funds. And here I just wanted to highlight 3 new competitive grant programs that I thought were important for some smaller agencies. And we know the increased overall growth in federal transit funding is historic. And
Can you step back just for a moment to the other
Yep.
page? We had the 3. So I just want to make sure you had a moment to see that. I think you're already fully in line with that and aware of it, but I didn't want us to go too fast by it.
Yes. And we're happy to send these slides out as well.
It'd be helpful just to say what agencies are administering those 3 types of funding. I mean,
So the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation Discretionary Grants, I think they're all 3 FTA,
okay.
I think. Zero emission vehicle charging and fueling infrastructure discretionary grants and rural surface transportation discretionary grants. And here I wanted to highlight the changing for formula grants for tribal transit. So this new bill helps their formula. They actually grow year after year now as opposed to stagnant every year, which is great. We touched on this at lunch, but I can't imagine there will not a CR, a lot of double negatives there, but there will be a CR after the election, I'm sure. And then hopefully before the holidays, we will have some type of FY23 bill. But like I mentioned at lunch, I really think it's important that if you don't have a relationship with your congressional office, to make one ASAP. You know, earmarks are real and they are back and they are definitely being used. So don't make sure to lose out on money that you could have. And
For
that's
those veteran people who've been here a long time, that really was of such importance and significance, that when you keep hearing the term, as we said, community projects is now the term being used for what some of your colleagues who've been here a while will probably say, the old earmarks are back.
Yes.
Say, the new community projects, or to call them, are back.
Yes. And we are also very happy because both the House and the Senate included some really great plus-ups, plus-up is an additional funding on top of the authorized level for bus and bus facility funds. So that's low-no, all those good things, which is great, and Senate. So I think we'll be happy with final numbers, whatever comes out of negotiations with the House and the Senate. So before we move on, any questions on appropriations or authorization? Cool. Now I wanted to highlight the low-no bus funding. So one of the things that CTAA worked on for a very long time was to educate Congress on the importance of the low in low-no. Congress was really set on battery electric and battery electric alone. So we worked closely with our congressional partners to encourage the low aspect. For example, one of our board members in Rogue Valley, she uses methane pumped from her landfill to fuel her vehicles, but because that was a low vehicle, that would have never counted under the previous low-no funding. So we've got that expanded quite heftily. And here's the Utah award that we talked about at lunch, the Park City Transit, which is super great with the battery electric buses. So here's the full breakdown of FY 2022. So you can see that large urban really isn't taking up as much of the total grants anymore. Rural, small urbans, and the medium-sized urbans are really, really coming for them, which is so great to see.
So large urban was in the green, which
Yep.
historically
There
had
we
the
go.
greatest proportion, and now we're talking about getting much more in the equal playing field.
Exactly. So the majority of the total vehicles are battery electric, and we estimate that these awards include nearly 500 new rural transit vehicles with a number of urban transit grants going to paratransit fleets. So that is for these vehicles. And then I just wanted to kind of quickly show, yes?
I have a question on that. And maybe it's just my own ignorance. When we're looking at paratransit electrification, it doesn't seem like there's that much out in the industry.
There's not.
I mean, it's either, A, you've got a third party that basically takes an empty chassis and electrifies it, or you're downsizing to like a Ford Transit type.
Yeah, and that's been something that when we're in these small bus crisis conversations with these big companies, we are bringing this up constantly, because one of our concerns too is this administration is really pushing low-no, but if there's no supply, then it's kind of like we don't want to lose the money, because then Congress will ask, well, why didn't you spend all this money? And then we say, well, there's no paratransit vehicles, because a lot of our members use those types. So yeah, we are aware and cautious of.
Has there been any, ultimately we're kind of beholden to the big auto manufacturers in our world. And, obviously they're starting out with consumer cars, and at least we're making some progress into trucks, and it seems like that, a 350, a 450 range of vehicle is what we really need. Do we have any indicators of when manufacturers may start to electrify those types?
Soon. So I was going to chat about that with the small bus crisis stuff, but we spoke to Ford, and they said that they will be pushing out they're launching e-transits, and they're building those, I think, on the F-150s or some. Yes, they are starting to do that, because they're pretty much, I'm sure we also, they discontinued their previous model to really push the electric. So here's the vast majority of battery electric buses are going to those large urbans and medium urbans. Fuel cell, still really heavily large urban, but the medium urbans are becoming more and more interested.
Again, many medium urbans back there are in gray.
Yep.
I know sometimes it's hard to read the team print.
Yes, sorry, this is the gray. Propane, I wanted to highlight this because I thought it was very interesting. Majority rural are going for the propane vehicles. And hybrids, mostly medium urbans are going for those hybrids. CNGs, again, mostly medium urbans. And then other, all rural, mostly. So rural's really starting to get an interest in electrification. Questions? Anyone interested in Lono? I would definitely recommend you chat with our NCAT team. They excel in this space, but just wanted to throw it out there if anybody had questions of their peers with electrification.
So to share with you, Scott, Taylor, and many of us are having these ongoing conversations based on what we all know, which is that the most important part to all of you, having the increase in pricing of what you're trying to get in vehicles, having contracts canceled, in many cases that have occurred to many members sharing that with us, and certainly having the conversations that tie in with Buy America as well. You know, there's things that many of you, especially rural agencies, have said, I wanted to do things in minivans, and not having the ability with very specific aspects of that, not allowing things to be as flexible as what is on the market that could be retrofitted that way. When you're trying to hire drivers, wouldn't it be nice to have to have CDLs for as many of them in terms of having that market availability, in terms of hiring people as well. I mean, there's a lot of impacts we know that go beyond that. So we're constantly in these kind of conversations, and Scott is with members of Congress, as to we know we fought for more than a decade to try to get caught up to when there were only certain states that got funding and all taken away from the rest of the country. We finally get the funding there, working with the Bus Coalition, which many of you are aware of or are members of, and then getting to this point. We understand that part, but in a practical sense, hearing from many of the vendors, their lack of ability of getting the parts that they need, not just the chips again, but all kinds of parts, is what they're sharing with us as well. So those conversations at the highest levels are going on by us on behalf of all of you. I know you know we're a membership association, being members, and we listen to members as our top priority, but we're representing the whole industry as a whole, and that's what Congress turns to us to do, to educate them, and what all these vendors are asking of us. So if there's anything else that comes up you want us to know, it's Scott and Taylor and NCAT that are here to take that in, and that's how we keep taking what we need to in terms of what you're sharing with us in all capacities.
So that was a great segue into the current environment of the small bus crisis. So definitely focused on the body on chassis vehicles. And the next slide we'll go over through what the state DOTs have told us, but all of our members have said that it's minimum 2 to 3 years that they're waiting for a vehicle. So here were the results of the state DOT survey that I sent out this morning. So 46% of our state DOTs indicate that the expected delivery wait time is anywhere between 24 to 60 months. 52% have had a canceled contract or voided or anything like that. 37% of the state DOTs are expecting an increase in price of greater than 40%. The majority, 80% of the state DOTs, are very concerned and have an unprecedented level of concern regarding the state of good repair and standard vehicle replacements. So we're really focused on this. As I spoke about at lunch, we've been talking to the big bus dealer and builder and OEM to try and see where we can all kind of meet together and work on this issue. So Scott has brainstormed several solutions, and here we have 3 slides that I will just quickly highlight. So first solution, maybe we just go to Ford and say, like, we beg you to build more chassis. Maybe we ask for a proposed Buy America waiver. Maybe we can get clearer guidance on deadlines as it comes to vehicle delivery. Maybe we look into performance bonds. Maybe we automatically cancel vehicle contracts if they're not delivered within 12 months. Maybe we ask the FTA to explore criteria with the Defense Production Act. Other solutions include streamlining current regulations, creating kind of what you were chatting about earlier, a consolidated purchasing pool to expand our purchasing power, and increase purchases of other vehicles when body and chassis are not. So we've come up with several solutions. The big bus dealer and builder, we're pretty happy with all of them except for a couple, so that was a good sign. But I wanted to kind of open it up to see, what challenges are you facing? Are we over-exaggerating? Do you think our resources would be better spent elsewhere? What do you think is going on, and what do you think we can do to help? What solutions do you think are out there?
So I'm curious to what the manufacturer said. I mean, earlier you said that they think that it'll take, what, 6 to 7 years to come out of where we're at?
Yeah, the builder / dealership combo think that it'll take 6 to 7 years. Ford thinks it'll take 2 to 3.
What was that purpose?
For getting us out of like this current state. So like they think addressing the backlog and then doing the orders from there will be 2 to 3 from 2 to 7 years. One of the things that we are encouraging our members to do is the bus dealer / seller builder, they have told us that the biggest issue they're finding is that rural systems are getting themselves in line. They're seeing a new number, they're getting scared, and then they're backing out, which puts them 4 years down the back line as opposed to where they were previously. So they said the number one thing that you can try to help us with is encourage people to stay in line. We can renegotiate, but don't lose your place, because once you lose your place, it's going to be so much worse.
I mean, it's a little frustrating because it seems like there's a monopoly.
Absolutely.
And, you know, how do you break that monopoly? When everything's been consolidated.
Yes.
The plants have all been shut down, right? It really leaves us with no options.
Yes, and also, unfortunately, is they're all public companies, so as much as we can go to Secretary Buttigieg, there's nothing much he can do because they're not government. So it's a really tough crisis because there is a monopoly, absolutely, and the price increases are going to keep going up as well. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Plus, I mean, all my decades, and you all know yourselves from the private sector, when you have Amazon or other fleets saying, you know, you tell us what to pay and we'll pay it. Snap our fingers.
Yeah.
There's the check, there's your electric fund transfer. What do you think they're gonna do, right? I mean, just realistically. And we know that. So it almost made me think, myself, when we were listening just on the way here to come to the conference, Scott, Amy and I, Amy and Taylor were on this call with Scott with some of these top people, and we were conferenced in. And you know, you're just quietly listening to all these discussions, and our frustration is right there with you on some of the things being told that we're sharing with you very transparently. At the end of that, I thought, it almost makes me wonder, like you're saying, do we have to come up with something where we're saying, this is the one as universal model as we can take. You get it into your system, it's lined up in that way, you open another factory because it's going to be X amount of vehicles for this amount to spend. So you don't have to wiggle much, take that expertise, we're going to have to settle on this bottom line of this and just get you to pump it out then, as soon as the parts, I know you can't do anything about that. But I mean, I began to think, like, do we have to be the bottom line practical here? And then perhaps, I'm truly saying, perhaps some waiver to the Buy America part to supplement some other things that you need to do to get the minivans or do some other things on top of that. I don't know.
Todd.
I would be curious to, you know, and I don't know where the number would come from, whether it's from FTA or finance, but I would be curious to know what the total demand is across the country per year for this type of vehicle. You know, because right now you've got either one-off agencies ordering 1 or 2 at a time. You know, in my agency, we're ordering 25 at a time per year. still, that's pretty low quantities.
Right.
If you're going onesie twosies.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm just curious about.
It's like a uniform group buying power. It's like the
Right.
group buying power
Right. And is
of
that
the
even
industry.
around possibilities? Because if you continue down the cycle of us buying anywhere from 2 to 15 buses per agency per year, whatever that is, it's never going to move the needle.
So I will say, and as we can believe it or not, but the big bus dealership told us that they are acting as that voice for us, and that they are procuring in this massive purchasing power just for transit.
So
I mean, those are the words we heard.
I'm curious on the Buy America waiver. I mean, I'm all for keeping jobs in America, but
Yeah.
how realistic is that? And does that really get us anything? Is there vehicles outside of meeting the Buy America requirement that are available, or is it the same situation?
Yes, there are vehicles available, and the issue that we're running into is things like steel are cheaper in Canada. So it would really help us in this one scenario to look elsewhere. We have about 2 minutes left, so I just wanted to.
Sorry, I looked at the history of, there was a long time ago, there's something called a DCC streetcar, which was, everybody gets together, designs one streetcar, and that was made through the 40s and 50s, early 60s for everybody. And FTA, really maybe in the early 90s, tried to do the same thing for buses, for 40-foot buses, because everybody was spec'ing their own 40-foot bus, and it was just getting very balkanized. Folks thought, well, if there was a standardized 40-foot bus, maybe this would be cheaper. I don't have a ton of knowledge about it, but my impression is that it was not successful.
There's definitely been efforts congressionally to bring that back, as recently as last year. And whereas agencies would pay extra to do the extra customizations of whatever they would want, I don't know. We hear split things on it from our members on whether or not they would like it, but it is, I mean, people are interested in it.
Right, there was that vehicle, like white, it was like there was the name of a book, and it was like national specifications, and then, yeah. And I think part of the problem was that people wanted to do their own thing.
Yeah.
We're working through that.
So, yeah, we're trying to get consensus about what everyone could like
Exactly.
live with, yeah.
Yeah.
We all think that we have some unique thing that we're dealing with. And sometimes weather is that thing a little bit, but we kind of work the same way as Ryan. We think, oh, we can set up a lights.
But I think we'd all say if we're coming to 7 years or so and it was the worst case, we'd say we're going to have to do some things to come to that middle ground. I mean, we just don't have a choice,
I agree with that.
right? I mean, it would come to that if that's what it started really realistically being told, you're not going to like this answer, but, and then we'd say, yeah, of course we don't like the answer, but.
Where I think you can see, where I think you see individuals agencies start to compromise and come together if you could get a price break on it and if you could ensure the quality, right?
Yeah.
So if you can get the quality, if you get the price, I think you're gonna, people say, I can move on some features, right? I can move on my own customization, but if I can get the quality and the price, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, we moved on compromise, and we're buying vehicles off the lot just because there's some available. I mean, so I think you're right. If the availability's there, the quality's there, we'll start to move.
We're remembering that, you know.
Yes.
We're coming back, you know, Scott wants to know our conversation of what we're bringing back, of course.
So we are out of time. This is our contact information. I also forgot to mention earlier that Todd is our state delegate for Utah. So if you ever can't find one of us, Todd is the resource. I'm going to volunteer you and he will get it to us. So please always remember that, but we are available all the time whenever you need us. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time, all of your work, and thank you.
Thank you.